Ready.
Yeah, we are already 5 minutes behind the schedule, and if John needs to leave, I think it's good if we are able to start rapidly.
Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, so so we are in line with all the participants. You confirm?
Sorry?
We are in line with all the participants. All attendees are listening. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so welcome to this seminar. So my name is Christophe Duhamel. I'm the acting program manager of the program management team of the initiative 50 by 2030. This seminar is a part of a seminar series organized by the initiative. And the main objective of this specific seminar will be to explore the role of agricultural data for informing food systems transformations, in particular on the African continent. We will have in a first session, we will welcome distinguished presenters, partners working in Africa for reporting on data challenges and gaps, particularly in the framework of the CADEP biennial review process. Then we will have in a second session two managers from the 50 by 2030 initiative that will be providing examples on how the 50 by 2030 survey instruments and activities related to supporting a better use of the data collected will contribute to the production of critical agricultural data, and how this could be leveraged, for example, in the CADEP process. And then we will have also a last discussant coming from the African Union Commission, who will bring the point of view of the African Union Commission on all these process and all these challenges. So we will have the first session. So the first session with the three main presenters has a time allocation of 40 minutes. Then the two first discussants will have 15 minutes, 7 minutes each. And Dr. Simplice Nwala, the head of Division of Agriculture and Food Security of the African Union Commission, will conclude during a session of 15 minutes. Then we will have a session of question and answers for 15 minutes. So for your information, the session will be recorded. We are present on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. So if you want to post on these different platforms, do use the hashtag 50 by 2030, which is indicated written on the title slide, the agenda, and the question and answer slides. We really strongly recommend participants to put their questions in the chat. We will try to get to as many as possible at the end. So we will post the presentation and recording on our website within 1 week for those who would like to share it. Okay, so this was rapidly my introduction. So since we are a little bit already behind the schedule, I suggest that we move directly with the first session, with the three presentations from our colleagues working on the African continent. So I will ask them to introduce themselves, and they have each a maximum of 12 minutes for their presentation. So over to you, John, for the first presentation.
Thank you, Christophe, and thank you for the organizers. My name is John Ulimwengu. I'm Senior Research Fellow at IFPRI, but also the Africa-wide coordinator of the ReSAKSS platform. I was asked to, using the UN Food System Momentum, to do the mapping of the CADEP-BR process using the UN Food System Summit framework. As many of you may know, the CADEP, Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program, is the main agenda for agricultural transformation in Africa, but it comes with M&E, monitoring and evaluation systems, and of course the BR, the biannual review, based on the Malabo Declaration. So that's the background. Next slide, please. So my presentation will be brief. First, I will highlight the overall structure of that CADEP biannual review framework, say a word on UN Food System Summit framework, and then dive into the mapping itself, which is really a first attempt to map the two, and then finish with some recommendations and highlight main findings. Next. So for those who are not familiar with the CADEP Malabo agenda, it's, as I said, comes with a framework for monitoring and evaluation and the reporting. And that framework includes 7 commitments, 7 goals that the head of state have pledged to achieve by 2025. You have recommitting to the CADEP process, enhancing investment finance in agriculture, ending hunger by 2025, halving poverty through agriculture by 2025, boosting intra-African trade in agriculture commodities and services, enhancing resilience to climate variability, and of course, mutual accountability for actions and the result. All of that is the combination of all of that gave what we now know as Africa Agricultural Transformation Score, which is a combination of performance categories from each of the commitment, and the performance categories themselves are supported by indicators, 47 of indicators. And then behind the indicators, you have parameters. As of the latest, we have more than 400 parameters in the system. But the mapping that I'll be proposing here is based on the 47 indicators. So it's a little bit higher. The idea will have been to use the individual parameters, but that's something that it's a work in progress. Next slide. Now, on the UN Food System Framework, this is a summary of the pile of documents, that the report that were produced. So on your left, that's the food system framework by component. You have the food supply chain, where you find input, supply, production, food production systems, storage and distribution, processing and packaging, retail and marketing. You have the food environment and consumers' characteristics, more or less the repackaging of some of the things, food availability, food affordability, messaging, consumer characteristics, consumer behavior, food safety, and then to cap all of that, we have external drivers that affect the food system framework. And on the right, what is known now as the action tracks, 5 of them: ensure access to safe and nutritious food for all, shift to healthy and sustainable consumption pattern, boost natural positive food production at scale, advance equitable livelihood and value distribution, and build resilience to vulnerability, shocks, and stresses. So we will use the two framework, so to speak, to map the CAADP BR and see where African countries, because that is what is happening in Africa, where are the gaps, where they need some improvement with respect to this food system approach. Next. So we start with the action tracks. So when you map the BR system with the action tracks, that's what you have on your left. On your left, and a number of we map up the number of BR performance indicators. Remember the 45 BR indicators. So I could not list all of them here, but when you look at the track number 3 on boost nature positive production, so that in below is the list of indicators from the BR that are part of that action track. The problem with action tracks is that they are not mutually exclusive. You might end up with the same indicators that are part of the 2 or more action tracks. Now, on your right, we try to use the benchmark, the BR benchmark, and to define which country, how many countries were on track, could have been on track had we used the UN food system action tracks as the framework to track progress. As you can see, on track 3 and 4, none of the African countries would have been on track based on the action track food system. This is for the 2019 BR process. I have the result for 2021, but I'm not allowed to present because it hasn't been officially launched. Next, please. So we did the same mapping, this time using the component of the food system as I described. We reshuffle a little bit but still the same structure with different names, so the most striking here is that when you look through all the 47 indicators, there is none on processing, packaging, storage, transportation, logistics, retail, and marketing. And that for me is concerning, because if the CAADP and Malabo agenda are to be transformative, as they said, they claim, then missing processing component is problematic, because there is no way you can achieve transformation without processing. But if you are not reporting on processing, it means they are missing on policies, they are missing on investment, and that's, for me, was the highlights here. We tried the same thing. Again, had we used this system to track progress with respect to the CAADP agenda, how many countries would have been on track by component? Obviously, on poverty, none of the countries, and then it varies. On input, only 1 country; on production, only 4; and health and nutrition, health outcomes on only 3 countries. And again, this is 2019. We have the result for 2021 that we cannot share here, but you get the idea of what we are trying to do. Next, please. So in a way of concluding, by adopting the CAADP agenda, it's clear that African leaders have already set the foundation for taking a food system approach to achieving the national development objectives. So when you look at the mapping we did, yes, there are holes in the system, but by design, the idea of a food system is embedded within the CAADP agenda. Yes, so there are still holes in the system in terms of reporting coverage, and what I highlighted in processing is one of the key. Countries are at different stages with respect to food system action and component. That's too, it's, we'll need to do additional analysis because this is a common agenda, and it's at some point we'll need to make sure that countries are moving along quite. We don't have to have similarity across the continent, but it doesn't make much sense that one country is still lagging on inputs. Another one is all the way at the end of the chain, the system. It doesn't make a good, vibrant, and resilient system. As we said, the momentum created by the UN food system is an opportunity to substantially improve on the implementation of the CAADP agenda. So this is an opportunity, and I hope my colleagues from AUC will emphasize this, to maybe push countries to adopt what I call the UN, not the food system type of investment plan to boost, to add to what is happening on the ground. The BR and the African Agriculture Transformation Score may be implemented with additional indicators. I mentioned already this, and of course, we need to continue to improve on countries' statistical system. The mapping that I did was purely statistical. We didn't go to assess the quality of the data, which will be the next stage. Thank you.
So thank you very much, John, for this very informative presentation, which is a little bit setting the scene. I think that that's really really interesting to do this exercise of mapping with the UN food system framework. I think it's really important, and that's a very good initiative. So I suggest that we move immediately to the second presentation. So I give the floor to Greenwell Matchaya. So please don't forget to introduce yourself. Thank you.
Thanks very much. My name is Greenwell Matchaya, senior researcher at the International Water Management Institute based in Pretoria, and I lead the ReSAKSS program for Southern Africa with academia. Next, please. So in my presentation, I'm going to focus on, maybe spend a few minutes on the introduction to the CAADP process and the biennial review process. And then I'll go to other issues of data and how the ReSAKSS program has tried to help countries to improve data systems. As a way of introduction, as many of you might already know, the Comprehensive Africa Agricultural Development Program is the key agricultural development framework for Africa. And this, it has been so since 2003. It is aimed at reducing poverty and increasing food security and nutrition on the continent. In 2014, in Malabo, it was reinforced further with new other commitment areas, and heads of state therefore adopted the so-called Malabo Declaration, which had 7 commitment areas as an enhancement for the CAADP framework. So today, through that Malabo, the CAADP now focuses on 7 commitment areas, one of which is mutual accountability. And this mutual accountability emphasizes on the need for countries to conduct biannual reviews. So these are just reviews to be conducted every 2 years in order to understand whether African countries are really achieving or are on track towards achieving whatever they agreed at Malabo. And most of this presentation is going to base on the results of the biennial reviews for the past. I'm not going to speak about the scores of the present biennial review, as my colleague John has already said, because those are not yet official, although we know some of them. So I will not even be tempted to talk about them. Okay, go to the next slide, please. So John has already presented on this. I think it's an opportunity to just pass them, but these are the 7 commitment areas in the Malabo Declaration, which countries are supposed to focus on. So in the biannual reviews, it means we are trying, or the African Union together with its partners are trying to appraise countries as to whether they are achieving the targets set on each of these 7 commitment areas. And I'm not going to go through them again because John presented already on this. So please, may we go to the next slide. Yeah, so the commitment number 7, which is on mutual accountability to actions and results, as I said already, also focuses on the need to conduct biannual reviews. So each and every country in Africa has to participate in biannual review process in order for the African Union, as well as those countries, to know whether they are making progress in achieving the Malabo Declaration. We have kind of so far conducted 3 biannual reviews processes, and the 2 of them, I mean, the summary, the high-level results are as on this slide. So for the 2017 one, which was the first one, we discovered that we found out that 20 member states were on track to achieving this. 27 member states were not on track overall. But when it came to 2019, for various reasons, which have also been summarized in other discussion papers, only 4 countries were noted to be on track, and 45 member states were not on track for that period. One of the things that we constantly see across the biannual reviews is the fact that some challenges are kind of pervasive, the cut across time and the space, and some of them are to do with availability of high quality data for purposes of reporting. So data issues are kind of problematic. I think that one is something we have observed since the first biannual review. Although we are not talking about the scores of the biannual review in 2021, the data challenges are also there. So let's go to the next slide so that we go into this further. Now, because we did realize that after the first biannual review process that there were kind of serious challenges in as far as data issues were concerned, on the ReSAKSS side, we did embark on, with funding from Bill and Melinda Gates and support from USAID, etc. We did embark on a program to try and improve data in some of the countries. So the initial countries that we focused on included Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Senegal, and Togo. That's in the 2019 period. And then in this period that is just ending, whose results are not yet out, we also did focus on Zimbabwe, Botswana, Uganda, Benin, Burkina Faso, and Burkina Faso. Yeah. And in these countries, the capacity strengthening activities that we focused on included assessing the previous process of biannual reviews to understand what went well, what did not go well, what were the things that could be sorted out in the next biannual review, what are the things that could still be outstanding, maybe because they need time to sort. And then we would constitute a team and train members of what we call data clusters. So we group people into clusters so that in each cluster they focus on issues that are related. So these clusters generally were kind of organized around all the Malabo commitment areas. Make sure that the stakeholders that are there are only focusing on collecting data, improving data in that area. And also in terms of selection of the members of those clusters, we would always also take into account their strengths or the focus of what they do in their day-to-day lives. And then we would then validate and submit the data to the African Union after ensuring that it has undergone all the processes that are needed in order for it to be good, kind of good data, or at least in relative terms. Good. The next slide, please. So this is a summary of what we will do. I think it's what I've already said there. We can also take a look for those with interest. They can take a look at this paper by Benin, my colleague Kaluja, myself, and Mbai for 2020, where we summarize the experience for the previous years. So it's really summarizing the process of what we do in the country, with the country, in order to try and improve some of the issues that we kind of find out. So in a nutshell, you first embark on an assessment of the past biennial reviews. Then as you launch the next process, you take those things, the issues you found out, into account. You form clusters or strengthen them if they're already there. Conduct some analysis of issues that you were kind of blocking progress in the previous biennial review, and then ensure that you embark on the process of collection of the data, cleaning the data, culminating into the national-wide validation of that data. So where stakeholders come and they have a say in terms of the quality of the data. And then thereafter, you submit the reports to the SADC, not to the SADC, sorry, because I'm based in Pretoria, but really I'm talking about the continent. So, but we submit them to the continental regional economic communities relevant to that country. And then after the feedback from those countries, we send back to the countries, and then the countries send back to the REC, then the REC sends to the African Union. So that's kind of the process generally that we followed to try and improve the process at the country level. There were also some other things that we did, but I think for purposes of clarity, we should summarize them this way. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is just talking about the country selection. So for the countries that we focused on, we kind of selected the countries based on their readiness for what we call SAKSS. So the SAKSS is one of the programs we're doing. These are strategic analysis and knowledge support systems. There are certain criteria that we use to consider a country, whether a country is ready for a SAKSS function. But the other one was the willingness of that country to participate in the process. And this was very key, whether they are ready to tell us the data challenges that they face so that we can together try to sort them out. And then also an understanding that the fact that they are participating in the program or the interventions that we are embarking on does not imply that they should be concerned so much with the biennial review score. So the score is irrelevant, really. We just want to help the countries. And in this, in the 2020 paper, we also kind of try to use reporting rates, data missing rates, and data quality changes to try and see whether whatever is happening in those target countries is leading to some changes. So in general, we find that there is an overall improvement in the data reporting rates for the 2017 to the 2019, at least in those countries which we intervened in this program. And so that the capacity strengthening activities conducted in the pilot countries seem to have helped in terms of achieving better results. So those results, we're talking about reducing missing rates of data, improving reporting rates on some indicators, and improving on the quality. Some of the details can be read in this paper, which there's a link here. Please, let's go to the next one. This is just an overall summary, and we should take this as work in progress. But if you just take a look at the data, so comparing the 2017, 2019, as well as the 2021 biennial reviews, if you group the countries into where we are doing the pilots of where we had some kind of an intervention I'm talking about here with Bill and Melinda Gates, and then compare what we are seeing there with whatever is happening in the non-pilot countries, then you can start seeing some differences, at least at the general level. You start seeing that, for example, if you take a look at the reporting rates in 2021 and the versus in 2017 by the category of countries, you find that if you say, okay, how much has reporting improved in these countries over time? So you take the difference from today, reporting in 2021, compare with reporting in 2017, and then do the same for all these category of countries, you start seeing that the differences, the improvements are much more in the countries where we are doing the piloting. And when you take the difference in these differences, just to see what's happening without necessarily talking much about causation, you can still see that there's some positive, there's still some positive. So the difference in differences appear to be positive, so which can still, until something else is said, you can still start saying that it appears that there's something good happening in the report in the countries in the pilot group. Go to the next slide, please. If you also just now list the top 15 countries to have reduced indicators with missing data parameters. So as John said, we have indicators, which is said are 47, but each indicator has parameters. And if you count them, they can go up to 200. Okay. Now, if you, one way to take a look is to say which countries do seem to have fewer parameters with missing data, or which ones have a lot of parameters with missing data. Now, if you try to just also say, okay, which ones have reduced parameters with missing data in 2021? If you take a look at them and you list them as the top 15, so take a look at this one, you'll find that, okay, many countries appear to have reduced the number of indicators with missing data parameters. But interestingly, Botswana, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Kenya, which are also in our pilot, they seem to be there as well, which I think it's a good thing, because it's saying something. You remember the pilot countries are just 10. If 4 already are there, but actually they were not there in the past, I think it's a good thing. It's also kind of saying the same story, that it appears that that intervention is bringing about some good results. May we go to the next one? Good results in the sense that we are improving the data in those countries. Again, these are the top 15 countries with missing data in 2019. So these are the top 15 in the 2019. I've sorted them according to that. If you take a look at 2021, I also sorted them and then sorted them again by 2019 to see how many of these countries which had missing data also appear in 2021. You'll find that not everyone appears there. There might be new ones, but interestingly, a lot of others have also improved basically. So a lot of other countries, from the ones that had missing data, they have improved. And some of those are indeed the ones that we are also focusing on, Botswana and Mozambique. Go to the next one, please.
Greenwell, you have still 2 minutes, please.
Okay, 2 minutes. Yeah, I'll make it. Okay, so now these ones, I think my colleague Anatole is going to talk more about this probably, but this is just like a quick look at which of the indicators are giving a lot of problems. So these are the top 15 indicators with missing data parameters in 2021. And you can see there are those to do with trade, growth rate in value of trade in agricultural commodities, there are women empowerment ones, etc. So, and the existence of government budget lines. These are some of the troublesome indicators, which I think my colleague is going to talk about as well in the next presentation. But the good thing is there is still some kind of an improvement over time in some of these indicators, meaning that the efforts we are doing, even beyond the Bill and Melinda Gates countries, they seem to also be reflected in these in these indicators. Okay, the next slide, which I think might be the last but one. Okay, so in general, it would appear from this kind of very high-level analysis, this is not a causal analysis, but when you look at the data and you take these differences computations, you start seeing that in the countries which we are working on with the Bill and Melinda Gates, it appears that there's some improvement in the number of parameters reported or the reduction in number of indicators with missing data, which I think appears to show that there's something good happening there. And even if you look at 2021 data, you find that Botswana, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Mozambique. So this is not data on scores. As I said, we're not talking about that, but this is just the factual information that is there available. You will find that they are some of the countries that have improved a lot in terms of reducing missing data parameters. And these are the countries we are working in as well. So in terms of recommendations, the last slide, please, the last slide. We're saying that it will still be very important to broaden, maybe at the country level, the composition of the biennial review teams, so that a lot of work can take place already at the country level before they submit the data to the regional economic communities and African Union. It's also important to strengthen country and regional data validation processes, and this means also putting money into those, and improve the general review mechanisms at the country level, which we call the joint sector reviews, because the joint sector review is like a platform that if strengthened, it can improve the biannual review reports. And again, it would be good to invest more in data generation, data management, and data analysis at the country level. And I think this point, John also said the same. It cannot be overemphasized. It's extremely important. In most of the countries, you find that they also complain that M&E comes as a secondary, but I think we should be taking it as primary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Greenwell, for this extremely clear presentation, for reminding us this complex process of biennial review at different levels, this back and forth exchange between country, regional economy, economic communities, and continental level. Also, I would say quite the positive message related to step-by-step improvements that you have seen in terms of reporting. It's true that, and we understand from your presentation that there are still some specific topics where efforts should be concentrated, but I think it will be nice to listen from other colleagues from the 50 by 2030 to check if some of these existing gaps could be filled with new instruments. Okay, thank you very much. So I suggest we move to the last presentation of our colleagues from the African continent. So I give the floor to Anatole Goundan, please. And don't forget to introduce you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christophe. Thank you, John and Greenwell. I'm going to briefly present the CADEP BIA demand for agricultural survey. We can go to the next slide. So, my name is Anatole Goundan, Senior Associate Scientist at Academia. So, my presentation here will start with a quick introduction. Then I'll discuss the BIA demand for agricultural survey, the supply of ag survey, the case of Senegal. Then I'll finish my presentation by some concluding remarks. Next, please. I think from my two colleagues, most have been said regarding BIA. What I can say now is BIA indicators are about commitment countries have at the continental level. So they are very important for each African countries. And we also acknowledge from Greenwell and John's presentation that we have some data gaps, we have data challenges, and we need to improve the data system in Africa. Next, please. Here, I present the 7 thematic areas of the BIA, and as Greenwell mentioned previously, we have a total of 266 data parameters that need to be reported by countries in order to compute different indicators in the binary review process. Next, please. What have we noticed in the 2019 BIA process? This table gives the top 10 indicators for which we have missing information. For the first one, we can see that we have a total of 42 countries over the 49 countries that reported information, that report some missing information. Among them, 29 didn't report anything regarding this indicator, regarding the 5 parameters needed to compute the Food Safety Trade Index. And you can see along this table that we have many countries that are reporting missing information. And the number of countries that didn't report anything regarding different indicators are several. Then we need to see how we can improve the data reporting system, the data system, what are the indicators we need. So it's very important that we know exactly what is needed for country, what country needs to report this indicator, how we can target specific survey to collect those information. Next slide, please. Coming to indicators that we think could be reported using an agricultural survey, we have also that many countries are not reporting those indicators, meaning that they don't have the specific parameters to report. They don't have any database on those aspects that can be used to report. For example, the first indicators here regarding the price information, the wholesale price, and the farm gate prices, we have 29 countries that didn't have this information for 2019. So this, enough, we have too many countries, and it means that we need to focus on those aspects. We need to see how we can get those information to report on the CADEP indicators, because the performance of a country are being assessed through those indicators. Next slide, please. For various indicators, it's very tough for African countries to report. We don't have any data sources to get those information. For example, in Cabo Verde, the last DHS available was at 2005. We have some initiatives, some efforts across the continent. For example, the World Bank Initiative, LSMS ISA, is a very important initiative that helps many African countries to have agricultural survey that can be used to fill BIA indicators. However, the coverage is very limited. We have only 8 African countries that are covered in these projects. We have also the 50x2030 initiative, which is willing to cover up to 30 African countries, but still the number of parameters, the number of indicators we can fill from such initiative is very limited. So we think it will be important to have more specific, more design targeted survey to collect the most important, the most challenging indicators that country needs to be on track, to be assessed through the different BIA indicators. Next, please. For example, if we take the case of Senegal, to report on the BIA indicators, we may use DHS information, and that is available up to 2019. We have several years of DHS in Senegal. Recently, IFPRI ReSAKSS project, facilitated project with the local government, collected several survey data. For example, with this project, we collected data on dried cereal, we collect data on irrigated rice in Senegal, and horticulture, different value chain in horticulture. We also study the seed value chain, the fertilizer, and trade different aspects of the agricultural sector. One innovation in this PAPA project is its use what we call a local analytical network. Next slide, please. Where we bring together different stakeholders. We have people from the statistical bureaus, the research centers, universities, farmer organizations, civil society organization. Those people are bring together to think about what are the needs of the agricultural sector in the country. Then they are split in different data clusters to specifically work on the need at different steps in the different stage in the agricultural sector, like production, consumption, trade, nutrition. Next slide, please. To sum up, we can say that in Africa, we have the data system is weak, at least in many African countries. There is a need to help those countries to increase the human capacity, to increase the organization of different databases that exist, because in some countries we have different databases, but the fact we don't know where those databases are, who are in charge of this database, who we can contact to get the right information. So we need first to have a mapping of what exists in every country, help country where we don't have any such information to collect the specific indicators required. We also need in our projects like 50 by 2030 initiative, how this project can help those countries to better report on the different BR indicators. Finally, we can say that PAPA-like project, which is very important, very comprehensive, that covers a different value chain in ag sector, need to be replicated, should be replicated in different African countries. So I will finish here. Thank you. Back to you, Christophe.
Thank you very much, Anatole, for your very clear presentation, which is a perfect bridge with the interventions of the two managers, the two technical managers of 50 by 2030. So you opened the discussions on the need of more statistical sources for being able to compute indicators for the biennial review process. So it's true that there are some new instruments that are proposed in particular through the 50 by 2030 initiative. And my colleagues from FAO and IFAD, I think, will be very happy to maybe discuss some of these options you presented into their discussion. So I suggest that we move. I think this presentation was the perfect bridge with the next session. So I would suggest that we go immediately to the second session, where we have two discussants, so two program managers from the initiatives. First one is Chiara Brunelli from FAO, and Michael Steiner from IFAD. So I give you the floor, Chiara, please. Christelle, can we have the PowerPoint on the screen? Thank you. Please, Chiara, you have the floor.
Thank you, Christophe. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chiara Brunelli from FAO, from the Statistic Division, and in this meeting, I'm representing the data production component of the 50 by 2030 initiative. Now, in the very few minutes that I have ahead of me, I just would like to briefly explain how the initiative can contribute to monitoring the CADEP framework, making specific reference to increasing the availability of the data, whereas probably Michael will touch upon the use of the data. Now, as some of you in this meeting know, the 50 by 2030 initiative is a collaborative effort of donors and international agencies with the goal of closing the data gap for agricultural statistics. And one of the main objectives is generating data for the agricultural sector with intention to inform national policies, investment plans, and of course to monitor the national, regional, and global frameworks. When it comes to the regional frameworks, in the Africa region, of course, our main objective is supporting our partner countries in monitoring the CADEP agenda, generating data that are relevant for the agricultural sector, because this is our range, our sector in which we operate. That can be collected through farm-based surveys. So I really would like to emphasize these two elements. We focus on the agricultural sector, and our tools are farm-based surveys, or in the case of some countries, more extended rural-based surveys. This is a clear commitment of the initiative, so filling and monitoring the CADEP agenda is a clear commitment of the initiative that is also being signed off with our donors. When we develop the tools that are at the basis of our methodology, we made effort to address as much as possible the CADEP indicators, and our tools at the moment are able to monitor 9 of the CADEP indicator, as Anatole was mentioning. And quickly, I just mentioned that they are the growth in irrigated areas, the growth of yield in main commodities, fertilizer consumption, access to financial and advisory services, land tenure rights. They also contribute to calculating the growth of the agricultural value added, expressed in total terms per worker or per hectare. However, in addition to the 9 indicators, I think there is space for some expansion, because we support countries in collecting data on post-harvest losses on the farm. And we are collaborating with the Women's Project led by IFPRI and the Emory University on the development of a scale that is based on the well-known Women's Empowerment in Agriculture Index, but is more suitable for inclusion in large-scale surveys. So in summary, I think we have the potential to contribute to 11 indicators. That's where we are at the moment. The second remark that I would like to make concerns the quality of the information. Now, we are all aware that, especially in developing countries, generating reliable and accurate statistics for the agricultural sector is challenging, because farmers don't keep records of the inputs and the outputs of their production. Now, in our collaboration with partner countries, we really accompany them throughout the survey cycle, from the survey design, so sampling methodology, survey instruments, up to the analysis and to the dissemination of the data themselves, which is a topic that Anatole just mentioned. So let's say that not only we increase, or we try to increase, the availability of the data in agriculture, but we want to guarantee that the data are of a good quality. And this is for us very important, because that's the only way in which we can really inform policy design and investment plans, and then ultimately also gain the trust of the data users. as probably Michael will elaborate more. As a third remark, I would like maybe just to give a little bit the idea of where we are at the moment in terms of implementation. At the moment in Africa, we are active in 6 countries, and in the next couple of years, we are planning to be active in 13 countries. So there will be quite a considerable expansion of the initiative in Africa in the next couple of years. Obviously, our partner countries make the final decisions on what we collect, but we work closely with them on the development of the survey instruments, and we can inform the survey design. So, taking into consideration all these remarks, so what indicators we know we can provide, where we are at the moment in terms of geographical coverage, and the issues concerning the quality of the data, I think that there is scope for strengthening maybe the collaboration between the initiative as a project that can really increase the availability of data for CADEP framework and the CADEP BR, operating, of course, through processes already in place. We don't need to create new processes or new settings. And in my view, this collaboration can be very useful because for BR, it can be an opportunity to learn which CADEP relevant data have been already produced or are being collected through our countries. And for the initiative, so for us, it will be very important to be aware of the data gap that are present in our countries and that can be taken into account during the design stage. And to me, this can be really a win-win collaboration between these two initiatives. Concerning the top 10 indicators that we have seen in the presentations, in a couple of presentations, the top 10 indicators with the missing data, I must say that the vast majority of indicators, of the 10 indicators, are indicators that are outside the scope of an agricultural survey, and so our contribution is actually limited. However, I see some potential, for instance, in collecting some data, like, for instance, the farm gate price for main crop and livestock commodities, which is one parameter that is needed for the calculation of the wholesale farm gate price. So something that probably we can expand on. And as I mentioned before, we're also in collaboration with IFPRI and Emory on the women scale. So once this is developed, the African countries will be proposed to adopt this scale. Now, with reference to the presentation of Anatole, we have to be a little bit careful, perhaps, in setting the right expectations from agricultural surveys, because we may have some issues regarding the reference population and the scope of the survey. In an agricultural survey, the reference population are households engaged in agriculture, so the survey results cannot necessarily be used to represent the entire population. At the most, they can be used for representing the rural population. Of course, when we are speaking of multi-topic household surveys like the LSMS ISA, maybe the considerations are a little bit different. So we need to be very careful in understanding the reference population of the surveys in order to use the data in a proper manner. The second point, similar, regards the topics, so the scope of the surveys. Indicators concerning nutrition and food security don't necessarily enter into the scope of an agricultural survey. They may enter into the scope of a multi-topic household survey, but not necessarily in an ag survey. So it's important that in opening up this dialogue and this collaboration, I think we also agree on what we can offer and what we cannot offer, or what could be more difficult for us to offer as a project. I think I'm running perhaps a little bit out of time, and I don't want to steal time to Michael. Maybe the only final remark that maybe I would like to take the opportunity to mention is that as FAO, we are leading the data production component of the initiative, but we also run a parallel project, which is the Global Strategy for Improving Agricultural and Rural Statistics, which started recently in its second phase. And one of the objectives of the GSARS, one of the several objectives, is strengthening the country capacity to produce SDG and CADEP indicators. So out of the several trainings activities of the global strategy, there is one specifically focusing on CADEP and SDG that will be run in collaboration with BR and the regional economic communities. The GSARS will target 12 countries, and all of them are also 50 by 2030 countries. So this is for us a good way to create synergies between the availability of the data that is coming from the initiative and the capacity of analyzing the data that can be provided through the global strategy. So I'm going to stop here, but during the question and answers, we can go a little bit more in depth on some of these points. Back to you, Christophe.
Thank you very much, Chiara, for these extremely important clarifications of what the 50 by 2030 survey instruments can do and cannot do. I take this opportunity for reminding participants to put their questions in the chat if they have questions. So don't hesitate to use the chat if you have questions to the presenters. So let's move immediately to our next discussant. So Michael Steiner from IFAD, please. Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you, Christophe. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. We've heard from experts at ReSAKSS on data challenges, and now from FAO on data production efforts at 50 by 2030. The need for data and some policies based on evidence is extremely high. The pandemic has caused enormous problems for everyone and created an urgent need for accurate, timely data, along with evidence-based decision-making. Unfortunately, many things that have been progressing have gone backwards the last few years. Our second speaker, Greenwell, indicated that the number of countries on track of monitoring performance declined from 20 countries in 2017 to only 4 countries in 2019, and the number of countries not on track increased from 27 to 45 in 2019. This is bad, obviously, because use of good data does matter. Evidence-based decision-making must be used for projects and policies. Data has often not been used for making policies, plans, and investments that have been based only on opinions or based on someone who knew someone. But with the enormous challenges of shortages of land, water, inputs, along with weather shocks, good policies and programs are desperately needed. Our third speaker, Anatole, indicated that the CADEP BR review showed that there was a lack of awareness of available data sources and adequate capacities for analysis. Well, obviously, if people do not know about the availability of the data or do not know how to use the data, that severely limits data use. The 50 by 2030 initiative is looking at 7 different factors that lead to data use. Awareness of the data and expertise to analyze the data are 2 of these factors. Additional factors are demand, availability, access, utility, and trust. IFAD will conduct a data ecosystem assessment in all countries in the 50 by 2030 initiative and will identify the degree to which these factors are present or absent in the countries and look at exchanges and practices between the data producers, the data intermediaries, and the data decision makers. 50 by 2030 will provide information on awareness and expertise. These issues are defined by the BR and will address all the other factors. Following the data ecosystem assessment, IFAD, along with our partner organizations in the country, will develop a series of interventions to promote data use through a series of technical assistance in the country, training workshops, seminars, and conferences. Using data from multiple sources to address complicated issues related to agriculture is very complicated. We've heard about the large number of CADB indicators. Even if national statistics organizations produce the data, data needs to be analyzed to produce the appropriate information for decision makers. 50 by 2030 will work with the data producers, the intermediaries, and the decision makers. Work by data intermediaries is very important and critical so that decision makers receive information that they need. The data assessment survey has just recently been completed in Uganda. The survey is currently underway in Ethiopia, and very soon we'll be starting a data assessment surveys in Senegal and Nigeria. So while 50 by 2030 data use work is in the early stage, there's already been some important activities. First, I want to tell you about is that IFAD had organized a competition for research grant projects. And this was open to all the first 5 countries in 50 by 2030, which is Ethiopia, Senegal, and Uganda, and Cambodia and Georgia. So 18 grants were awarded to people, and 12 of these were awarded to the 3 countries in Africa. And these were projects that use 50 by 2030 data to generate practical research that can be applied to national policy making, program design, or investment decisions. The proposals cover a large range of thematic areas such as agriculture productivity, agriculture financing, gender and land rights, climate smart agriculture, food security, among others. So many of these research grants can contribute towards meeting the CADB indicators. So we obviously do not have time to tell you about all 18 of the grants, but I wanted to give you an example of one of those. So I looked at the papers and noticed that 2 of our research presenters mentioned the indicator on proportion of empowered rural women in agriculture. So I looked at our researcher grants and looked at it, and definitely, yes, one of these grants is from Uganda, is on women in agriculture. Using the 50 by 2030 national data, the research proposal from Uganda examines the gender effects of land ownership on household food security and welfare. The results suggest that secure land tenure by females positively affects household food security and welfare. So this is an example where something that the research could lead to a policy which will help to improve land tenure for women. So I think the research that IFAD is already supporting is certainly can contribute to positive results and for countries to be able to better meet their CADB goals. So on November 30th, December 1st, December 2nd will be this International Data Use Conference. The results from the research projects will be presented at this, and everyone will be invited. And then in addition, there will be other talks about 50 by 2030 work, specifically about data use, but it will be it will be a virtual conference. It'll be about 4 hours each day over a 3-day period. And the conference will be operated under different time zones. So no matter what time zone you are in, something should be available for your time zone at least 1 or more of the days. To conclude, I just want to say, well, first, I've worked in agriculture information forever. And right now, this is a renaissance period for agriculture information. There's never really been anything like this before. With CADB and all the indications, and ReSAKSS, and Academia 2063, and now the 50 by 2030 initiative, there's never been anything like this. And of course, global strategy work. The level of interest in producing and using agriculture information is at an all-time high. but the need for producing and using agriculture information is also at an all-time high. There are many challenges facing people for agriculture production and many decisions that need to be made. Decisions by government leaders, people, agriculture producers, agriculture businesses, people at all levels. Anatole gave a good example in Senegal involving work involving all the different sectors. This is something that IFAD will certainly plan to work with, is that working with all the different sectors to help to make sure people are aware, they're able to use the data, they can access the data, because we know better data can lead to better decisions, but the data must be used in making the decisions, which has often not been the case. Data can improve lives when it's effectively used, but the data needs to be analyzed to generate the insights and inform decisions. IFAD, as leading of the data use component for 50 by 2030, looks forward to working with ReSAKSS and all the other organizations on promoting data use for agriculture and rural development to meet the CAADP goals. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Michael, for this insightful presentation on what the 50 by 2030 initiative is doing in terms of guaranteeing that data collected at country level will be used, because we all know that if data are not used, data has no reason to exist. So you measure always the quality of data in its capacity to be used for formulating policies, monitoring policies, and measuring the impact of your policies. So we are a little bit behind the schedule, so I suggest that we move immediately to the last discussion. So we are very pleased to welcome Dr. Simplice Nouala, Head of Division of Agriculture and Food Security of African Union Commission, who will give us his point of view related to the strengthening of governance for improving agricultural statistical systems. You have the floor, Dr. Simplice.
Thank you very much, Christophe, and thank you for inviting us to this very important discussions on the data and the CAADP.
So, Dr. Simplice, if I may, maybe you should switch off your video because the line is not very good.
Or my platforms in academia have said that
yes, Dr. Simplice, your connection is very weak.
Okay,
so
is it down?
You should probably
is it
switch off the video.
Yes, I've done that. Are you getting me? I have switched off the video, and are you getting me?
Yes, perfectly.
Yes.
That's working now. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Now, I was saying the partners from ReSAKSS and academia have very alluded on what the CAADP is all about, the challenges for data and all the capacity development or strengthening activities that we are doing to improving the data for the CAADP. But before I start, I want to say the BR has basically the BR report three main objectives. The first one, we have said it, is about reporting on the progress that we are making towards, member states are making towards achieving the Malabo commitment. But there are other two that are quite important. The first of these two is that the BR is used as an advocacy tool. The BR should be used to raise awareness, to advocate for member states to invest more in areas where they are not doing so. And the second is about planning. One intent of the BR is the BR report is used as a planning tool. But for these two to be achieved, the BR should be of quality. The BR report should be of quality, and the quality of the BR depends on the quality of the data. We have discussed the challenges of the data, but we should be, I would not need the presentation so that it takes less time. One of the things that we want to mention is that the BR is quite a participatory process and a collaborative process. It is coordinated by the African Union at continental level with its partners, but it is a self-reporting process where the member states are supposed to produce the data that is used. And we intend that at member state level, we expect that at member state level, the process is very participatory because the data do not originate from one sector. The data originate from several sectors and from several sources. At regional level, the regional economic communities are central to the CADEB BR reporting because they are the one receiving and validating the data from country level. So in order to strengthen the governance around to improve agricultural statistical system and basically looking at the data, we should be looking at the three levels. The first one would be at national level. How do we ensure that the BR data collection platform at country level first knows where the data comes from? I was happy or a bit shocked to hear that in some countries, the team do not even know where the data is. And this may happen because simply in terms of the governance arrangement, the data sits where the Ministry of Agriculture cannot have access to. So we need to strengthen the data systems at country level, looking at the institutional arrangement, trying to include the BR as part of the normal data collection systems at country level. And here, the inclusivity calls for the participation of all stakeholders, including partners at country level. So we see here the 50 by 20 by 30 program playing a role, as well as any other partners supporting the member state where they are in collecting quality data. The second thing is the regional cooperation. We have noted over time that the BR process is quite an expensive one in terms of data collection, analysis, and the rest. Expensive not only in terms of the UNSO or in terms of financial resources. So there is a need at the regional level maybe to start working on a pooling of resources for certain data that could be collected for the region. And here we are really calling to strengthening this regional cooperation in order to have the regional economic communities being able to have the capacity for validation and analysis of the data. And here we have some initiative that we think will be worth looking at. We currently have the ECOWAS, who is working on an M&E framework to monitor the ECOWAP. I think once this monitoring framework, online monitoring framework is operational, that will ease data collection for the CADEB BR in ECOWAS region. So again, here there is an opportunity for the project to look at how do we influence or how do we work together with ECOWAS to strengthen the ECOWAS M&E system. And finally, at continental level, as I said, the process is an inclusive process. We have tried over the last 3 BR cycle to bring around the table all the partners who can ensure the quality of the data. We have brought around the table the FAO, we have brought around the table just the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and all the rest, just to ensure that the data that are submitted by countries, I said it is a self-reporting process. Once the data are submitted and at the time of analysis, we ensure coherence before analysis. And although, unless we're strengthening this governance at national, regional, and continental level, we may still face challenges in the data quality for the BR, and this will certainly have an impact on the BR report. So we basically look forward for strengthening the partnership. We have listened to the offer made by the project managers, and we would like to kindly invite you when we start the next BR process, because the BR process always start by a critical analysis. The presentations that were made by Anatole and Greenwell will certainly be shared again during this exercise. And this is the period or the time where we agreed on how collectively we strengthen member state. We agree collectively on which partners will support the collection of which data for which indicator and so on. So you are kindly invited to this exercise, and we will ensure that you are part of the process when we start the next BR cycle. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Simplice, for this really insightful presentation. I really appreciated what you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation, mentioning that a good biennial review is linked with the fact to have access to good data. And I think that one of the most important issues that you are mentioning is this access to data. And I think that it's really important, and this is, I think, a very good recommendation that the teams at national level in charge of the biennial review should be really involved in all the structures of coordination or governance of the agricultural statistical system at country level. From my own experience, I've seen some countries where I had the impression that the team in charge of the biennial review was a little bit isolated. And when I see that among the main topics where there are still issues in terms of reporting, and I noticed, for example, on trade, I have to say that I feel a little bit surprised, because in principle, in many countries, there are I don't want to say extremely good, but relatively good sources of information on trade. So maybe it's just a problem of having a better access to data. And I agree with you that the biennial review teams at country level should be trained. And colleagues from FAO have, for example, mentioned the second phase of the global strategy, where there will be really training at country level for better computing SDG and CADEP indicators. And we would really encourage the biennial review teams to participate to these trainings and really discuss with the community of statisticians and possibly identifies sources of information which would not have been identified up to now. Okay, so Having said that, we are a little bit behind the schedule, so we have in principle 15 minutes for a question and answers session. So if the participants and the speakers agree, we could extend a little bit the seminar for between 10 and 15 minutes. So we have received a series of questions from the chat. So the first question was related to the availability of the biennial reports 2021. So the first direct question was when these results will be made available. So this is probably a question to colleagues John or other colleagues working with John could answer. There was another question related to what are the measures in place or being considered to address the data gaps highlighted in most of the presentations. So it's more probably a question addressed, it could be a question addressed to both ReSAKSS academia or colleagues from FAO and other participants. Then there was also a question from a colleague from Nepal asking about the fact that LSMS-ISA is able to collect 8 indicators, whereas 50 by 2030 is able to collect 9 indicators. So are these indicators mutually exclusive? Are there plans for a discussion for trying to organize the different survey instruments for a better coverage of the CADEP indicators? So these are the 3 main questions we have received from the participants to the seminar, and there was a more generic question related to the use of data in stories for journalists. Well, I think it's a question which goes a little bit beyond the thematic of today. This is really important, and maybe Michael from IFAD could provide some answers on are there plans, for example, in the data use component of 50 by 2030 to associate journalists in the different trainings and technical assistance process. So who could answer to the availability of the BR 21 results?
I can come in. The BR 21 results will be presented to the ministers in December this year and to the summit in February 2022. So we hope to have the BR report released in February 2022.
Okay, thank you very much. That's extremely clear. Concerning the measures that are in place or being considered to address data gaps, which have been highlighted in most of the presentations, any reactions from colleagues from ReSAKSS academia or from FAO?
Christophe, maybe just a very quick reaction from my side, from FAO. So 2 points. In my view, we should first use at the best the information that we had the possibility to make available already through our initiative. So that's 1 point. And I think this can be done by strengthening the communication and the coordination between the initiative as a project and the PR teams. I don't know exactly which mechanism we can adopt, whether working directly with the BR teams at the country level or with a more central coordination. This is something that we can discuss. So using at the best the data we have, one point. The second point could be more on maybe analyzing more carefully some of the parameters behind the indicators. I have, for instance, mentioned the farm gate price as one very simple parameter that maybe we could expand on. There might be a few others that we are not aware. So this is also perhaps a discussion that could take place in order for us to serve as best as possible the need of the CAADP framework. And then third point, of course, making clarity on reference population and scope of the surveys, which are 2 points that are very important for maybe avoiding to raise wrong expectations also. Over.
Thank you very much, Chiara. So jumping a little bit on the question related to addressing data gaps. Of course, there are topics which are really far beyond the capacities of standard agricultural statistical surveys. And this is in particular what was mentioned by the colleagues of ReSAKSS, this low rate of reporting, for example, on the trade sector. So could we have from the ReSAKSS colleague some indications on the potential mitigation measures that are planned, for example, for solving this problem of low reporting on the trade sector? I think that would be really interesting to listen to that. So what are the measures that are planned for really addressing these low reporting rates?
I think there is no one from ReSAKSS or academia, so I can take maybe the floor here. Okay.
Yes,
Greenwell?
yes. So, but you can still go ahead, but I'll just attempt to say what I think we can do. So the initiatives that we're doing with Bill and Melinda Gates, they appear to be bringing about some positive changes. So one of the appeals I would want to make is that maybe, or suggestions, that we need to expand the number of countries. So far, we have covered 10 countries. If we can increase the number of countries where we give a hand-holding and these trainings, assessments, etc., we might be winning this over time. But also, we need to ensure that now the use of the BR report at the country level also has this element of encouraging the countries to really take data issues seriously. So after the reports are out next year, we need to make sure that we work with countries to consider the reports really for, say, the plans they are going to make, identify the challenging areas, and maybe develop programs there to try and see how they can sort out those those data gaps. And the last one is the one I'm thinking about now, is, the countries have what they call the joint sector review processes. So these are the annual processes they undertake in order to understand how they have done as a sector. Some countries do them well, some countries don't do them well. We did assessments as ReSAKSS in the past in 21 countries, and we noted that there are some recommendations that we can share with many other countries. It would be good to also have a program to make sure that we can encourage countries to be doing more of those joint sector reviews, so that when the biannual review cycle comes, it will be easier for them to kind of report on many of the indicators. Over.
Thank you, Greenwell. I just want to add one thing here, and maybe to propose or to answer to the question. Yes, there are many measures that have been put in place, such as the one that Greenwell have just alluded to. But from the experience, we have learned also that we need to start the BR process early in advance. I think that has been a challenge. have started the last 3 BR cycle, I would say, a bit late, and this has not given much time to countries or even to partners to chip in. So we want for the next BR cycle to start as soon as the report is released. And luckily this time, the colleagues from ReSAKSS and academia have done the first analysis on the data quality. They have done that early enough. So during the first meeting of the BR task force, we will have a discussion. And one of the things that we want to get from that discussion is from partners, because some of these data that are missing exist. We can hear from here, or have been collected by some partners. So we will have this discussion to see who is collecting what and how can this be captured in the BR report. So we will have this exercise early next year, immediately after the report is released. And Joseph, you will certainly be invited in one of the discussion to see how we're trying to address this. Over.
Okay, thank you very much, Greenwell and Dr. Simplice for the clear proposals and measures planned. I think it's extremely useful. Michael, concerning eventually the involvement of journalists in helping in engaging using data. Any suggestion from the
Yes,
component
yes.
of 50 by 2030?
Yes, we want to engage with journalists. First, when we're doing our data assessment survey, we are including a number of journalists from different sources, as many sources as we can come up with, because when we look at the data, we are looking at it by sector, from the public sector, private sector, academia, research, development organizations, and one of our categories is civil society, including media. So definitely first, we would like to get input from journalists on the state of information, whether it's available, whether it's accessible, on these factors that I mentioned. Second, then definitely, as far as we do plan that we would like to do some kinds of training to inform journalists of the availability of the data, perhaps some different ways to use the data, to present the data. So definitely we do actively involve the journalists. And then also we have our very active information specialist, Sala, who is on the line here too, that also is very interested in promoting and disseminating information about 50 by 2030. So yes, and I will be contacting you, sir, Mr. Badana from Uganda, specifically about things. Over.
Thank you very much, Michael. I saw the last comment from Tsitsi concerning the issue of BR data gaps and the opportunities offered by several projects. She mentioned the project Papa in Senegal. One small information I would like to provide on Senegal, because I was really interested to see the sources of information mentioned by Anatole in his presentation. But I think he missed one important source of information, which is the annual survey supported by 50 by 2030 in Senegal, providing data, accessible data, including microdata every year. So I agree, Tsitsi, there are many planning activities that needs to be undertaken. And as I said, sometimes there are sources of data which are unknown at country level, and that's also probably something where collectively, and I say collectively because we have, for example, already a discussion group between academia, the initiative, the global strategy, and the GPSSD group, which aims at really putting together ideas for really improving globally this BR process, particularly at country level. So we are now almost 15 minutes behind the schedule. So I would suggest that we stop these discussions here. That was a very fruitful seminar. I think that we have learned a lot, and I appreciated really the contributions from colleagues of ReSAKSS Academia, and also the good suggestion provided by our colleague from African Union Commission. There are potentialities for us to work more closely on all these issues, trying to improve the existing data collection instruments, and in particular the 50x2030 instruments, for trying to answer better to the requirements related with the BR process. Of course, the survey has its limitation, which is normal. We cannot address trade or other specific topics, but I think that there are areas where we could work all together and really make the necessary for improving a little bit all these processes at country level. So I would like to really thank all the panelists for their nice contributions, and also thanking all the participants and all the ones having asked questions through the chat. So as I told you, everything will be recorded. So all the presentations will be accessible. So within 1 week, I think it will be available on our website. So I wish you all a nice day or evening or night for some of you. I think it was a very useful session, a useful seminar. Maybe we should have 2 hours, but we are also learning for this series of seminars. So thanks very much to all of you, and take care, and let's keep in touch for the next weeks and the next months to come. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.